Well, good morning, or good afternoon, or maybe good evening, depending upon what time it is that you're listening to this recorded webinar. But we welcome you anyway. We're glad that you're with us today. Welcome to our Career Assessment webinar. My name is Brian Allen. I am a senior consultant with Career Management Partners, and it'll be my pleasure for the next hour to help you explore yourself and your reasons for the career that you're in or the career you are considering. That is a big question, a big task, and we are happy to say that there are some tools built into our Career Workspace website that you have access to, which can help you answer some of those questions if in fact you are pondering a career change or if you're questioning the wisdom of your career selection. There's something we can do about that, and this webinar is designed to introduce you to those tools and the concepts and the thought process involved in perhaps selecting a different or a better career path for yourself. That doesn't necessarily have to be the outcome of this, but at least an increased self-awareness of yourself related to the things that make up for a good job fit can always be a valuable exercise, but one that you perhaps have never understood before or taken the steps to discover before. So maybe this is why you're here today. Regardless why you're here, we're glad that you are here. Here's our agenda. Here's what we'll be covering today. We're going to be talking about the motivation objectives that people have for taking a step such as this. A couple of different methods that exist in the industry that allows us to assess ourselves and use that knowledge to make career decisions. But we're going to center on what we refer to as 3 career building blocks: your skills, your interests, and your values. And then we will go into each one of those and show you what the tool that's built into the system will do for you and how to take it and what it may reveal about you and your work, so that you can then take that knowledge and generate options for your career, do research to narrow down those options, and ultimately then to focus on and pursue proactively one particular career option that you have determined is the best option for you and your future success. And we'll cover all that in about an hour. We will, of course, at the end of the webinar, recap, some of our key points that we've made so that you can keep track of all that. And here's what we hope you walk away with at the end of the webinar today. We hope you understand that there are various methods of assessment that may help guide you and help you discover your best career path. But identify some things specifically about your interests, skills, and values and how to measure those things. And then start generating a list of career options. Not necessarily find the one, and that's an expectation that many people have. There's no process, there's no tool or assessment that can tell you without a doubt the one perfect thing for you. The world of work is far too complex and varied, and you are far too complex and sophisticated as an individual for there to be just one answer for every person. However, what we're going to do now can help you understand some of the things that might lead you towards the best opportunities, as well as understand and be aware of some of the things that might not be a good choice or might be a mistake or the wrong decision for your career. And the self-discovery process is what this is about. And many of us never get a chance to do that or don't know how to do that. But really, it's very, very valuable, because when you define your best career assets, most often in terms of skills, interests, values, but there are other things you can do, like personality types or your emotional intelligence or other kinds of preferences. If you gather that kind of information about yourself, that can really help guide you towards that ideal job for you, where your natural gifts and abilities and interests are fueled and energized on a day-to-day basis. You have a much better chance for success. You have a much better chance to overcome downturns or slow periods or mistakes or frustrations, so that you can get that ideal, optimum work-life balance that is so elusive, however so attractive to so many of us. If you're in the wrong job, work-life balance is going to be much more difficult to achieve. Now, many of us are in a career transition time right now, and that is a difficult time for most of us. But it's also a time of perhaps reevaluation. We're at a crossroads, but maybe we don't know what our goals are or what the right path is for us. And again, this self-discovery webinar is designed to give you the tools to help you make those decisions in a more effective way. It could be that your future should be on the very same path that you have been on in the past. The outcome of this kind of activity could be a validation of or a confirmation of the fact that you are already in the right kind of career for yourself. That's possible. However, it also could highlight some things that might help you understand the frustrations or the challenges that you have been unable to overcome throughout your career. And in fact, then highlight maybe a new path that might have less challenges for you. Whatever it might be, this is worth discovering. Because when you're on the career path that's right for you, you will know it. You'll have a feeling of confidence. Fear will be rare. Optimism will take its place. And then when that sort of environment exists, the odds for your attaining success in your career will be enhanced and in your favor. There are all kinds of things that can make up a good fit for a career. We're going to center on the 3 building blocks of interest, skills, and values. They kind of create then a pyramid, then, if you will, of the things that are going to be most present in both you and in the works that you're going to be looking to do, which can lead you to your success. Very often, the things you like the best are probably what you will give your most energy to or perhaps have the best success at. So it's important to know these things about yourself so that you can choose wisely. So that's kind of the premise. Now, you may have heard about some cliches. There's lots of them out there about job. You may have actually said some of these to yourself when you're in your job search. And like, I want to do something new, but I don't know what. Can't find a job in my field. Nobody's hiring. I'm willing to take risks involving something new, but only if they make sense to me. I need to make more money. We've heard these and others, and perhaps you've heard the granddaddy of all career cliches. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Okay, as a career coach for the past couple of decades, I wish I had a nickel for every time I heard a client say that, because it's not really a cliche, that's a reality. Well, there are all kinds of ways that a person can assess him or herself, but is it something that we should have already taken care of, though? Is that something that's done? Maybe not. Let me ask this question. How much time, thought, and energy do you or did you devote to some major life events? For example, planning a wedding. Maybe I did this in a workshop in a classroom with some college students the other day, and when I asked that question, almost all the girls started nodding and almost all the guys started shaking their heads. So this is kind of a gender-specific question, perhaps, but planning a wedding, it's something that many times females start doing, in their teens, if not earlier. And then when the actual proposal and the guy is there and you make the decision and you start pulling all the details together, that can take a lot of time. I happen to have a daughter-in-law who owns a flower shop who does a lot of weddings, and she's told some stories about some of the issues and the emotions and conflict that can happen in the consultation meetings to plan the flowers for a person's wedding, not to mention the dress and the food and the venue and the music and the address list and everything else, of course. So a lot of time, effort, and energy goes into planning a wedding. Also, maybe not as much time and effort involved in planning a vacation. I have a good friend who spends many, many weeks during the year thinking about, planning, researching, reading, watching videos, talking to other people, going to shows, all in order to have the perfect 2-week vacation. A lot of time, thought, energy. Now, other people just kind of pack a bag and go, but many people put a lot of time and energy and thought into planning a vacation. Making a major purchase of some sort. You're not just going to walk into a store and buy the first washing machine you see. You're probably going to do some research. You're not going to buy the first car that you see on the lot. You're going to do a lot of research in order to understand the mileage and the safety ratings and the rebates and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Buying a washing machine, a big screen TV, or certainly buying a house, making the commitment for mortgage rates and loans, and whether buy an existing house or build a new house, and all the kinds of things that go on. The point is, we do spend a lot of time and energy and thought to make sure we do not mess up these life events, don't we? Well, how much time, thought, energy did we put into planning our career? For some people, the answer is quite a bit, but for a lot of us, it's just, well, my career kind of happened to me. It was my story. When I was in college, I got a part-time job with an airline as a reservations agent. That the part-time job went away because the union contract was renegotiated and there were no more part-time jobs, and I had to either stay with the airline and go full-time and leave school, or leave the airline and go and stay in school. Well, I was not a very motivated student at that time, so the decision that I made was to say goodbye to school, say hello to full-time employment with an airline, which led to an airline career for a while. I didn't really think about that a lot. I mean, it just kind of happened, and I kind of rode the wave, if you will. And I think a lot of us do that with our careers. We just kind of fall into something, or something presents itself, and then we get good at it, and we develop experience and knowledge and expertise in something, and then we get paid for it, and we get paid more for it as we get better in it, and we gather new responsibilities, and before we know it, we're 10, 15, 20 years into a career that perhaps is not really a good fit for us. Well, that's not a good thing, and unfortunately it happens a lot, but that's why we need to take perhaps a different approach now, perhaps when we are in a transition and we're wondering if there may not be something better for us. Now, there are different ways of determining this. I'm going to talk about 4 different methods of career selection. We call them the intuitive method. That's when you have some sort of internal calling, or you've always known what you want to be, or a mission or a cause. The role model method, which is very common, used to be also in old days, where you just followed in the footsteps of a family member or some particular hero or what was the thing in your community or geographic area. Not too many years ago, there have been some tools created to help create what's called the scientific method, where you take sophisticated tools such as the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator or the Berkman Assessment, or there's quite a variety of a bag of different kinds of assessment tools you can take that can point towards the kind of career that's right for you. But what we are going to propose, and we're going to call these the CMP method, is the combination of skills, interests, and values revelations that you can take from taking the assessment that are built into the career workspace, and what those 3 things together might point you toward. But let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. The intuitive method. Okay, this is, I always knew what I was going to be, or I've always had a calling, or it came from my heart, or I've developed a particular mission or a special cause. My purpose in life is this. I had a clear vision or goal, but no question or fear about it. That is possible, and I know some people, but I think this particular method is somewhat rare, in that the person who has that personal mission or calling that they then act upon and build their career around, I think those people are fortunate, maybe even lucky. I have a good friend who I knew from church many years ago that I did work with for a while, and we were talking about careers one day, and she has had and still is involved in a very successful career in the world of human resources, HR. Well, one day we were talking about careers, and she said, well, I knew from junior high that I was going to have a career in human resources. When I asked her about that, what happened in junior high? She said, well, one day there was a career day, and parents were coming from, the students' parents were coming that were talking about their careers. And they had the whole variety of, nurses and secretaries and teachers. But this one girl's mother came, and she had a career in HR, and she talked about her career in HR. And from that day forward, I knew my career was going to be in HR. And in fact, she went to college and specialized in HR, got jobs in HR, moved up the ranks, and has had a very successful career. I mean, she's written books, and she's on the board of directors, and she's an authority in the world of HR. I think she's very, very fortunate. So this is one method, and if that is something that you've always had a calling or something that you wanted to do, and maybe you ignored it for a while, maybe now that you're in the time of transition, perhaps it's time to start thinking about pursuing that calling, perhaps. I mean, I guess that's just one of the options you have. The other method is called the role model method, and this is where you follow in the footsteps of someone in your family, perhaps. I want to do what they do. Or if you choose to, if your career is guided by where you want to live, there may not be as many choices as there may be in other places, so you may be somewhat limited. Or maybe you've just had a hero that you want to emulate and have the same kind of career. When I think of the role model method, I consider the Manning brothers from the NFL, the world of sports. And if you're not familiar with football, you still probably have heard of Peyton Manning, who recently retired but had been the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, where he won a Super Bowl, and also at the end of his career, the Denver Broncos, where he happened to win a Super Bowl in the final year of his NFL career. He also sells all kinds of things on television. I won't go into the little jingle he sings for a certain insurance company, but you may be aware of Peyton Manning. He has a brother who's also an NFL quarterback. Eli Manning is the quarterback of the New York Giants NFL team, and has also won Super Bowls. These are brothers who had the same career path. But did you know that their father was also an NFL quarterback? Archie Manning, who was the quarterback many years ago of the New Orleans Saints, back when the Saints were not that good a team. But Archie Manning was the quarterback of the NFL, of the New Orleans Saints, while Eli and Peyton were growing up in New Orleans, watching their dad be the local football hero, and in fact they followed in his footsteps and also became football heroes. That's an example of the role model method, and that it used to be the primary choice option for people in the world of work. You just kind of followed along with whatever your family did. If your father or mother was involved in farming, then you became a farmer. If they had a printing shop, you became a printer. If they had a cobbler shop, you made shoes. That was just the way it was. But that was maybe decades or centuries ago. Now we have more choices. It's a little more difficult, but this is still an option. The third type is the scientific model, where you probably need to have someone with certification and training and an in-depth knowledge of some of these sophisticated tools to be able to administer them and then interpret the results to help you just make higher sense of them, because they are pretty thorough. I myself am a certified practitioner of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. I'm familiar with a number of other tools that I use with my private clients that can very effectively surface key issues about you that help you then to understand the conditions in which you are going to best have a chance to succeed in your work. Again, it's never going to point to just one job, but it can help you to understand these things. So there's all kinds of tools that can help you understand your natural preferred conditions. But it's difficult to use these things alone. You probably need to have some professional to help you, and then also, of course, that's how they make their money, so you need to be willing to make an investment in yourself with these things. But they really can provide some significant insights into the environment and conditions where you have the best chance of your career being successful. The fourth type is what we call the CMP methods, and that's what we're going to focus on, and that's where we have tools available for you right now involved in the career workspace that you can begin this after the webinar's over. And it looks at these three areas: skills, interests, and values. These are not, however, the most sophisticated of tools. These are kind of very good entry-level or initial kinds of tools. They're not the same level as the scientific method, but they are still valid tools that can help you get your thought process started. They're located currently inside a career workspace. And when you are on your dashboard, look for the word assessments there. And that is where you will find the tools that you can begin to take to use this CMP method. So here's how you would go about doing this. Step one is to go onto the career workspace, access each of the three tools to do the assessment, and there's a series of questions or items to choose from. I'll elaborate on those in a moment. But as you complete each tool, the results of those tools are presented to you. The results of that assessment is presented to you. And then you can take the results of all three of those tools, having taken them one at a time. And in the process of answering all the questions or selecting the items or going through the process, you're going to recognize some things, or you're going to see some things that are going to stand out, and they're going to be something you look at and consider as you evaluate these things. So the second step then is to take that evaluation, take all that information, and take the knowledge that you've gained, and then begin to generate a list of choices, of possible or options for your career, your next career move. And you don't have to just look for one. You may want to select 2 or 3 or 5. Maybe 5 is the most I would suggest for someone. That might be too many for some of us. But get a list of options. Don't look for just one thing yet. Get a list of options of things that may be suggested to you. And then the third step is to take steps to evaluate and research and discover and dig deep to recognize which of those options that you selected are better than the others, or which of those options might not be good options, so that you can go through an evaluation process, an elimination process, that will ultimately allow you to decide on one particular of those options as the best for you, and therefore that becomes the focus for your future career search. Now, this is not something that can happen during the time of this webinar, so you will need to do further exploration, but we'll talk more about that towards the end. Let's take a moment and let's look a little bit closer at these building blocks. So we've mentioned them before, skills, interests, values, but what do we mean by that? What are skills? Skills are the things that you can do in the workplace. These are the things that employers look to see. Can you do this for me? Because if you can't, I'll pay you. And so quite often, skills are the things you can do. You've learned to do them, perhaps. You've been trained to do them. You have many years of experience doing them, perhaps. But skills are things at one point you did not have the ability, and at another point you did. So that skills are things that we can learn to do or have been trained to do. Now, there's a whole other world of vocational focus these days around the difference between skills and strengths. Skills being things you've learned to do, but strengths being things you have a natural talent for, and you never learned how to do it, you just had the ability to. But I don't want to get off on that because that's not one of the tools that's built into our career workspace. But I want to distinguish that skills are learned, strengths may be natural and unlearned, just present in us. What are interests? Well, interests are the things that we are curious about, the things we're drawn to or motivated to learn more about. So things we are always grabbed by whenever we see them. And if we're surfing on the television, going through channels and something's there, what is it that grabs our attention, makes us stop moving channels and watch a program? Or if we are leafing through a magazine, what is it that grabs our attention and makes us read the article? These are things that are inside us that we're naturally interested in. And sometimes, of course, our interests are not the things that we can make a living with. However, it could be the things that we enjoy outside of the workplace, our hobbies, the things we give our volunteer time and money to, perhaps. However, whatever our natural interests are, there may be some way of incorporating that in some way into the work that we do. And if we can do that, if we can find that combination, then the work that we're going to do is going to be more interesting to us. We'll be less put off by the difficulties, or less chance for boredom, and perhaps we'll be bringing more of our energy and attention to the work that we do, and therefore have a better chance for success. So it's worth knowing what our natural interests are. And values. Well, values are what I refer to as the rules we live our life by, and how we expect things ought to be, and that we make decisions every day based upon a set of values that we really have learned from many, many years ago, and we don't even think about it as we make the decision, but our decision process is based upon those values. And every time we meet someone new, we evaluate that person and whether they are someone we want to get to know well or that we can work well with, and that we get clues that suggest that they are or are not. Well, the things that we're basing those evaluations on are our values, and how we can easily connect with someone who we sense or get an impression that they have similar values to ours. And we may have trouble warming up to someone who we assess has different values than we, or someone who does something that goes against one of our high values. But we don't really think about that. We just feel that. So values are a little tricky. If I were to ask you to list your top 10 values right now, that would probably be something very difficult for you. However, you can take this assessment, and it forces you to think about things and decide what's important and what's not. And that can be extremely important for you to understand yourself in a very deep way as to why certain people are the ones that I gravitate towards, why certain situations are the ones I can thrive in, and other things are people I should stay away from or situations I should avoid. If you don't know what your values are, if you don't have a sense of them, that those things can be mysteries, and you can make continuing problems or mistakes as a result of it. So, again, these three building blocks build the a potential career for yourself, and the knowledge of these is important. Which will you choose? Well, one of these may be the most important to you, others may be less important, but your favorite combination represents what you probably will have the best chance for success at, so it's worth looking at those. Now, you will find the tools built in the Career Workspace on the dashboard, and that's what a simple sample screen we're looking at here. Under the dashboard, there's a row of blue words: jobs, project, jobs, people, organizations, places, documents, resume, and then the word assessments. That's where you'll find these tools. Now, actually, there's 4 tools built into that assessment section. One of the tools, however, is not about career selection. It's about interview, and it's called the Interview Skills tool. And that's just where you can select certain common interview questions, type in or videotape your answer, that then will be saved and can be evaluated by your consultant or someone else to give you feedback as to how well you're answering some interview questions. That's the assessment of interviewing that one tool is about. The other 3 tools that are under the Assessments tab are aligned with the CMP method. So the skills that you can look at, the tool that is there is called the O-Net Skills Search. Now, I'll describe the O-Net to you in just a moment, but this tool gives you 35 very common business skills, and you can select as many of those as you want, but your selection needs to be limited to only those that you're skilled with, those that you have the ability to do. But you don't just select them based on your ability, you also select them based upon how well you enjoy doing those skills or utilizing those skills. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The other tool is called the Interest Profiler. And this tool, it's a little bit longer, but it doesn't take that much long because you don't have to think as much. There are 180 different workplace activities, and for each, all you have to do is say whether you like that or you don't like that, or maybe you're not sure. And so it's really a good thing to do to kind of move quickly through this assessment and not think too much about it. Frankly, don't overthink any of these assessments in order to get the best results. However, that 180 is not going to take you that long because you just have to click like or dislike or not sure. The third tool is the Values tool. This may take a little longer, maybe a little more difficult because you're thinking about things you haven't thought about before often. But this focuses on our values, and you're given 20 different common workplace characteristics that you then have to prioritize. And there are some that are very, very important to you, and there are some that are not important at all. And it'll take a little time for you to distinguish and understand and then evaluate and prioritize these 20 characteristics. But once you do, you kind of have a picture of what is and what isn't important to you in the workplace. Very valuable to do. Now, let me tell you about the O-Net real quick. The O-Net is an acronym for the Occupational Information Network, which is a database and a website created by the United States Department of Labor, wherein the government describes in great detail over 950 different occupations that exist in the country. And it says user-friendly there, but it can be a little intimidating because there's just so much information there. However, you probably can on your own learn a lot of things. If you wanted to know something about a radiologic technologist, you've heard of that occupation, but you have no idea what that is. You can go onto the O-Net. Here's the link to go onto the O-Net. You can go onto the O-Net, type in radiologic technologist, and then get all kinds of information about what that job involves. What kinds of machines are used, what kind of setting is involved, what kind of skills and education are necessary. Which states have, lots of opportunities or which states don't. What's the salary range for different geographic areas for the, it's just amazing all the information that's in there. And so the O-Net can help someone to better understand, what their options are by helping them better understand the realities about a certain occupation that they may not know anything about before. So again, one of the things that we're going to suggest is that you, after the webinar is over, that you take these assessments, but that you also do research, and the O-Net is a great place to do some research. Okay, let's look in more detail at each of these 3 tools. And I can't show you the actual tool, but I can describe what you'll find when you go there and what to do in order to take the assessment effectively. So again, skills, those are the things we can do. We've been trained to do them. We have somehow learned. We've maybe even practiced and developed a level of expertise over time. Here's what you'll find when you take the assessment. There's going to be 6 different skill groupings, 35 total skills for you to be able to select from. And there's really no limit as to how many skills you pick. Now, again, approaching any of these assessment tools, it's important that you be very, very honest with yourself, however. If you skim the system, or if you take advantage or try to game the system, so to speak, you're only hurting yourself. You're only wasting your time. It's not going to really help you, because the information you get is going to be flawed, and it's just a total waste. So approach taking any of these assessments with the commitment to yourself. I'm just going to go with what's really true for me. And very often your selection is, the best selection is going to be the thing that perhaps comes to your mind first as you evaluate the different choices. I have found, and I think most people who do this sort of thing would agree, that it's a mistake to over-evaluate or overthink your answers. And it's also a mistake to think, well, if I want to be this, I better answer this way. That's not the right approach for this. So just kind of get centered with yourself and give it your best shot, but don't overthink it and go with your first inclination, usually. Now, what you do with these 35 skills is to pick the ones that you are good at, or you have acknowledged, you have knowledge of. Now, not just skills that I did it once, or maybe I heard about it but never have been able to do it. That would not be competence. Competence means I can do it. Now, you can have high competence, which means I can do it in my sleep and teach others, and I'm an expert in my field. Or you can have mid-level competence. I've done it a lot. I'm comfortable with it, but occasionally I need to look at the manual. You can have low competence, which means I can do this, but I struggle with it, and maybe I need to have somebody nearby to help me, or I may need to make some mistakes and learn from them. Or maybe I'm rusty and I haven't been doing it for some time. There's all kind of different levels. But you get to pick which of those levels would indicate, yes, this is a skill that I have. Now, I would also suggest, though, that you keep in mind, this is a skill that I want to do in the future. And that would bring in your motivation. How do you feel about using this skill? Because it's possible, as humans, we can have a high level of competence around a skill that we just hate to do, that we would rather not do anymore in our career. That's possible. Well, that would be a mistake to select a skill that you have low motivation for, even though you may have high competence. So there needs to be this balance between how good you are at it, but also how interesting or how motivated you are for it. Let's look at each of these groups in a little bit more detail. The basic skills groups are just things you can learn, mathematics, reading, comprehension, science, those sorts of things. 10 skills there. Resource management skills, a group of skills about how you allocate resources, like managing money or managing time. Technical skills, how good you are at design, setup, operating, solving problems using machines or technological systems. Things like programming, troubleshooting, 11 different skills in that group. System skills, understanding, monitoring, and improving business systems, things like using judgment or decision making, 3 skills there. Social skills are your people skills, 6 skills there, such as negotiation and persuasion. And then problem solving, how you can solve, and of course that's a major area, and that's the one skill in that group. So again, you choose from these, the ones that you are good at and you have high motivation for. Now, let me just give you an example of how this information can benefit you in your search for your next best job. Let's just say, theoretically or hypothetically here, that having taken this O-Net skill search, you've identified that your top 3 skills are problem solving, negotiation, and active listening. Okay, that may be a surprise, or maybe you knew that, but let's just go with that premise here. Okay, now the tool is going to suggest to you, I should say the tool, the assessment, the O-Net skill search. Once you complete the assessment, it's going to come back with a list of occupations that would utilize the skills that you have indicated in your selection. It's not going to say that because of this is the one perfect job for you. Again, don't have that expectation. But it is going to provide you a list of occupations. So let's say that problem solving, negotiation, active listening happen to be your top 3. By the way, it does not prioritize them like that. I'm only taking them out of context. But let's say these are the ones that you've identified. What kind of jobs might benefit from these skills or would require these skills? And there's all kinds of them, aren't there? I mean, problem solving is important in almost any job. Active listening, of course, would be very important in a people-oriented job, wouldn't it? As would negotiation. Now, when you look at those three skills, does any particular kind of jobs jump to your head? And maybe this is something that you've not done before, and maybe it's a little difficult to envision this. But when I look at those three, the job of, or the career of sales pops into my head. Don't you think a salesperson would perhaps have a good chance of succeeding if their top skills are problem solving, negotiation, and active listening? I would think that that may be a consideration. Now, some people hear the word sales and they immediately go into a stereotype of sleazy or characters that can tell you the truth, take advantage of you, or whatever. The old stereotype of the used car salesman. I don't want to bring that. I don't want you to be focused on that. But again, that's something that does happen. And I would suggest that you would resist any of those stereotypes when you are involved in a career selection process, and instead learn about them. And that's where you can go to the ONET and find, and sometimes sales is now called business development, perhaps in a lot of businesses. There's been various kinds of labels, but you may want to do some research around that. You may have never thought about before, but that's what this tool can help you to do, to explore some things or to identify some things. Again, I want to stress the pro tip here is that when you're selecting these from these 35 skills, make sure you avoid selecting a skill that you really are good at doing but you do not enjoy or would rather not do anymore in your career. That's a critical consideration. All right, so that's the skills. Let's move on and think about interests. So what are interests? Again, the things we're naturally drawn to, or things that grab us, or things we're naturally curious about or motivated to do. Now, I have a story about this, and for me, there's lots of things I have interests in. But one of them stands out for me is, and I'm always reminded about this very frequently, I love maps. I've always been interested in geography and maps. When I was a kid, I had a subscription to National Geographic magazine, and I couldn't wait for that issue to come in the mail. And when I got it, I'd go into my room, I would take the brown paper wrapper off, which it came covered that way in the mail. I would put the magazine aside, however, having taken from the magazine the map that was inserted in the magazine. And National Geographic, of course, are known for their wonderful maps. Well, I love those maps, and so I would take the map out, I would put the magazine to the side, I'd come back to it later. I'd take the map, however, and I'd carefully unfold it, lay it on the floor, and I would fall on my knees and I would just absorb that map. Where in the world is this place? What am I seeing? Where are the borders? Where's the oceans and rivers and mountains and cities, and what's the agriculture? I would just absorb what was on that map, and it was just fun for me. I've always been drawn to maps. Even today, if I go into a business office and there's a map of something on the wall for part of the decoration, I go right to that map. I did a presentation not too long ago for a regional transportation authority headquarters, and in their conference room, one whole wall was covered with an aerial photograph of the geographic area that that organization covered. And I love aerial photography. Oh my goodness! And so I was drawn to that wall like a moth to a flame. That's something I'm really interested in, always have been. And I spent my first half of my career in the travel industry. I worked for airlines and travel agencies and travel schools. At one point, I was an instructor in a travel school teaching people why someone would want to travel to places around the globe. I loved that. I loved it. And the fact that many of the jobs I had did not involve that on a day-to-day basis, but it did involve helping people travel to places around the globe. So that was that time in the career that I had in the travel industry. That was a wonderful time. I was great. I mean, I had my problems, I had my successes. It was a career has its ups and downs. However, the ups were higher and the downs were less difficult because I had a strong urge in the interest of geography in the first place. That's why and how interest can be critical to our selecting the best work for ourselves. So when we study interest, we have to talk about something called Holland codes. Now, this is not Holland, the country, but a man named John Holland who came up with this concept of these 6 different categories for all the different kinds of things that people can be interested in, these 6 different categories or themes or buckets, if you will, where all kinds of other interests can be kind of grouped in similar ways. And these Holland codes often called the REASIC codes because the first letter of each of the 6 different themes have been used and recognized for many years in my field, in the world of career development. You talk to people at high school or college or university career centers and they know about this. Vocational researchers know about this. Career coaches know about this. There's a number of tools that utilize this, and the tool that's built into Career Workspace also utilizes this theme or this foundation. Now the idea is that not everybody has equal interest in all 6 themes, but they do have an accelerated degree of interest in maybe 2 or 3 of them. And that then can help you narrow down what kinds of things that you may want to look for in the work that's going to be best for you. So let's take a closer look at these 6 themes. The realistic theme is where we begin, and this is kinds of things that people enjoy that involve practical hands-on problems and solutions. May deal with, not always, but sometimes may deal with plants, animals, real-world materials, wood, tools, machines. Many of these occupations that fall into this grouping involve working outside, physical exertion of some sort, more physical maybe than mental exertion. Do not involve a lot of paperwork or theory or dealing with the people a lot. So things like farming and ranching or athletics or building or construction, those working with tools or inside a machine shop, those sorts of things. Investigative theme for occupations is different. It's not as physical. It's much more mental than was realistic. So it involves ideas, extensive amount of thinking, research, science. These can involve searching for facts, figuring out problems mentally. Again, a lot of the science kinds of occupations falls into the investigative theme. Artistic is still different still. This is forms, designs, patterns, self-expression, work that is done without having to follow a clear set of rules. So, and again, artistic does not mean that you have to have artistic talent or skills, because again, we're not talking about skills here. We're talking about what are you drawn to. You may be drawn to the opera and therefore you love opera and go as often as you can. That does not mean you can perform opera. So we're not talking skills, we're talking interests. If you're drawn to the creative expression of words that make you want to read a certain newspaper columnist because of his or her way with words, that is an example of your interest in the artistic interest. Because of putting together words in the right way is a creative endeavor, and that falls under artistic. Social is one of 2 people themes. This is specifically around helping, communicating, teaching people, providing service. This is where nurses who work or doctors who work directly with patients fall into the people social theme. Where researchers in the medical field who work with laboratories or work with laboratory animals but not people may fall more in the investigative themes. There's a difference here you're seeing. So social is very much about people. Enterprising is also about people, but not so much the helping or teaching. It is the leading, the convincing, the persuading. This is where your business leaders are. This is where your salespeople are. This is where your religious leaders who persuade. This is where your bosses are. This is where your entrepreneurs are, who are willing to take risks and get things started. The enterprising thing. And then conventional is the behind the scenes, getting work done, working with data, details, making things happen, not making decisions necessarily. That's more in the enterprising thing. But it is, once a decision's been made and somebody said this is what we're going to do, then the conventional are the people who actually get things done. All right, so let's say you've taken the interest profiler, and it suggests that your top 3 of those interests are enterprising, social, and artistic. Okay, so again, your understanding of these themes can help, but enterprising and social, you may remember both of them involve people. So if these are your top 3 themes, then it's kind of a given that your best choice for a career would be one that has regular interaction with people. It could be people on the phone, it could be people on the computer, it could be people face to face, it could be happy people, it could be angry people. That's people. If you don't have access to customers, you still need to have access to coworkers as people on a regular basis. Because again, enterprising and social combination, these are the kind of people who probably will seek out coworkers. You'll sit down at their desk to chat with them. You'll lean over the cubicle. You'll gather at the water fountain because people interaction is a part of it, is who you are and what you're driven to. Combine that with artistic, and you're probably going to be wanting to do things with people who think outside the box occasionally, or who have something unique to say or something creative in order to share. Or you probably are going to want to have the ability to show your artistic creativity in some way. And there's all kinds of ways that artistic can show up in the workplace other than with drawing or singing or dancing. So for example, you can select the kind of occupations that might be good for you with this kind of information. You also, however, can learn about what might not be a good fit, what would be a mistake in your career choice by understanding these things about yourself. For example, if enterprising social artistic is my top 3 themes, then the kind of job that would not involve any ability to be creative, for example, let's say I was, or a job that did not allow for people interaction, would be a mistake for me, perhaps. For example, if these are my top 3 themes and I'm looking at a job involving data input, where I just sit at a computer all day and input numbers onto a spreadsheet or whatever it might be, but I don't see customers, I rarely am interacting with my coworkers, I'm just locked into the computer for data entry. That job might suck the life out of me if these are my top 3 interests. And of course, some people say, well, that's okay. If it pays the bills, what's the deal? Well, yeah, that's a decision that many people make. However, would it be greater if we could find a job that does pay the bills and pays our own internal interests? And that's, again, what these tools can help us to recognize. All right, now let's look at values. And again, I happen to think that of the 3 values is most important. But what are values? Values are the rules that we live our life by. And they were rules that when we were young, we were taught in a variety of ways. And when we were young, we didn't question. We just absorbed them like a son soaks up water. But at some point, as we began to mature a little bit, we got into adolescence, we started to question some of the rules that we had learned, and we maybe even reject some of them and pick up some new ones because, you know, we have new peer groups, or we're trying to be our own man or woman, and we decide things for ourselves. And that's one of the reasons adolescence is often a challenging time for people and their parents. But at a period of adolescence, our values may be fluid. There's a period of change. However, as we exit adolescence and enter adulthood, one of the things that moves that change is that we settle on a set of values that's right for us, and they kind of lock in place and they stay that way throughout the rest of our life, typically. Now, once we become adults, yes, we can still have some values change, but it would require some sort of a life event like getting married or having children or having a financial disaster or windfall, either one, or losing a loved one, or losing some, or maybe even being involved in a near-death experience, like walking away from a terrible automobile accident, and and then reevaluating your life as a result of that. Those kinds of things are what do happen, perhaps, that make people reevaluate their values. However, on a day-to-day basis, we do not reevaluate values during our adulthood. We just live our life in accordance with them as best as we can. And if the work that we do, and when I say work, I don't mean just the tasks, the environment that we're in, the culture of the company that we are employed by, the makeup of the team that we are a part of, and very importantly, the value structure of the leader that we have to deal with and that we interact with on a regular basis. All of those things, if they are not somewhat in line, then that can make for a difficult thing. However, when the work or the team or the leader that we are affiliated with on the job does support not all of our values, but our highest values, the ones that we think are most important, then that can lead to a work situation where we feel engaged and energized and satisfied and fulfilled. That we look forward to Monday morning, perhaps because we know we're going to get back into the job. That we, when we're on the job, we kind of get lost and we look up and the clock is zoomed around because we got so wrapped up in what it is we're doing. I mean, that's a better recipe for success on the job than the alternative of looking up and the clock seems not to have moved because you're so bored or you're so frustrated or you have that feeling of anger and you can't wait to get out the door, and Monday mornings are terrible because you have to get back on the job. All of those reactions and feelings about the work we do, at their heart, have to do with a set of values and how that work either supports or contradicts those values. Now, if the work we do violates some of our highest values on a regular basis, it's going to cause us to feel frustrated, disengaged, empty. If we don't do something about that and just let that go on and on and on over a sustained period of time, that can lead to burnout. And burnout is not just an attitude; it's a physical condition, a mental insight. It can hurt you. It can kill you, actually. So anyway, I think the values are very important. So what does this what does this mean? Well, values then are the things that we would say yes or no to a job offer for. I mean, if there's a particular industry that you must work in, well, if it's strong and important to you, is it based upon a value that you have? Maybe you want to work for a well-known, big, established, multinational company, or maybe you would prefer to be a big fish in a little pond, perhaps working for a small organization where you can have more input. Maybe you want to dress casually or maybe conservative. It has to do with the culture of the company you work for. Maybe you want to work alone or in a small group. That's up to you, perhaps. Maybe, but the job requires other things. You may want to look for the job that meets what your requirements are. You want to be a leader or a supervisor. Well, all these things, the answers to those things come from your values. So here's what you will find. You'll find 20 different categories, or 20 different values, if you will, or work situations. You see them listed here, but there's 5 different columns, and you have to sort out those 20 items and put them into the proper order, where the left-hand columns are those that are of more importance to you, and the right-hand columns are those that are of lower importance, so that in this person's example, industry preference is his or her number 1 value, and knowledge is their least important value. Now, by the way, there's some definitions given to these titles, so you just don't see the titles. You're given a definition to help you evaluate. But this is how the values tool work, and to put these into the proper order, it's going to require you to think about things a little bit differently than you have in the past. It may be a little uncomfortable, but I suggest that it's well worth the uncomfortableness or the rustiness that may come through your decision process, because you are going to be tapping into your values, many of which you've laid dormant or quiet for many years. And the revelation of these things can be very, very eye-opening for you. So again, let's suggest that your top 3 values came out to be honesty and integrity, location, challenging work. Okay? If that's yours, then working with a boss who plays fast and loose with the truth is going to be a major challenge for you. Or a job that requires you to commute an hour or more each direction every day, taking you away from your family, friends, your community. That could be a big, big challenge. Or work that is just the same old, repetitious every day, no variation, no changes. That can be these would be examples of red flags to look for in a job opportunity. That would be something that may ultimately undermine your ability to succeed in that job, or to earn success or feel success in that job. Okay, so I think you get a sense now that these 3 things are kind of deep, and they do require a lot of thought and interaction and understanding, but they don't lead to one thing. They're going to perhaps suggest a variety of options. By the way, the skills tool, as I mentioned, as you finish, will give you a list of occupations that utilize the skills that were high on your list. So will the interest profiler. It'll show you sample kinds of occupations that are in line with the interests that you've indicated. The values tool doesn't do that, but again, the values tool is kind of interspaced throughout all those other things. But looking at the results of those 3, you're going to get a lot of data here. And you want to take some time to evaluate all three of those things and look for some of the common things that pop up, whether it's a job title or whether it's a situation that you need to look out for. Maybe as you evaluate these three different reports, you get a sense that one of them may be more important to you. Maybe the values is the most, and that's what you really want to focus on. Maybe it's the interest or the skills. I mean, what, building blocks, so which of these is your cornerstone, if I can use that cliche? Then you're going to select a handful of career options. And again, we recommend 3 to 5. More than that probably is not going to give you the right focus. Less than that may miss some opportunities that could help you out. What do you do with those options? Okay, now is where you move into research and evaluate. You want to learn as much as you can about each of those options so that you can understand them well enough to rank them and eliminate some. Narrow down the choice. How do you evaluate these then? Well, the best way is to talk to someone who's currently doing that job or who has previously done the job. And that's where you tap into your network, and that's where perhaps you go into LinkedIn and look for someone who's had a job title of a job you're considering, and try to get a phone conversation or a face-to-face meeting with them where you can pick their brain about the realities of the job as they understood. Now, you need to understand though, their reality or their experience might be slightly different from what your experience would be if you were in a job, because you and they are different people. What's important to you may become unimportant to them, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. However, this is the best way to understand the reality of an occupation. Reading a job description, that's really not reality. The ONET is your other source. That's where you can get kind of unbiased description of the day-to-day activities of an occupation, but still not as good as talking to somebody who's actually talking to multiple people, by the way, who's actually done it. But again, the ONET is also a great place to go. Another great place that you may not have thought about is your local library. You can find a research librarian who can probably find information like finding a needle in a haystack. So if you have a local library nearby you, at college or university maybe, or a community library, I would say go try. If you live in a community, you're paying taxes to fund that institution. Take advantage of it. Go ask in the research library, I want to learn as much as I can about what radiologic technologists do for a career. See what kind of information they can come up with. Anyway, there's lots of sources, ways for you to do research, but ultimately, while you're doing research, you want to be looking for the pros and cons in your mind for each of these options. This would be a good job for me because, and make a list of those pros. This would be disturbing or challenging for me because, and make a list of those cons for each of the options you're looking at. And if you can be thorough with this, you might find that one of these options has a very long list of cons and a very short list of pros. Well, maybe that's your sign then that option needs to be eliminated. And then there's a couple of other options here where they have a long list of pros and a short list of cons. Well, then you need to do even more research in order to help distinguish between those two. That's the point, though. You're going to have to determine which of these is best for you so that you can pursue it. Your consultant, if you have a consultant assigned to work with you during this time you're affiliated with CMP, your consultant, I'm sure, would love to help you make sense of these things if you were to share with them. And by the way, when you take the assessments on the internet, on the Career Workspace website, your consultant, if you have one assigned to you, does have access to those results as well. So you and he or she can have perhaps a very spirited conversation with one of your weekly meetings about the results of your assessments. I love to do that, by the way, with mine. Anyway, here's the point. This is a process to help you to choose your system, not just to wait for it to fall in your lap, but for you to choose for it. Because when you're aware of your best skills, interests, and values, and what combination of occupations they point to, you'll have increased self-knowledge about your most promising route to career success. And frankly, that's worth the effort. Okay, so to recap, many of us aren't aware of what's ideal for us. The CMP method explores 3 building blocks of skills, interests, and values. And the tools that are built in for each are the ONET Skill Search, the Interest Profiler, and the Work Importance Tool. The results of these can help you to identify 3 to 5 options then you research and do investigation and talk to people to help narrow down that list to the one that's the best for you, and then you create a job search strategy that pursues that job. Whether there's an opening right now or not, now you know what you're looking for and what you were really wanting to achieve, and that can make the difference in a successful job search or a frustrating one. Well, that's our webinar for the day, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that this has caused you to think about some things, and I hope that this leads you to some action which can help you solidify your focus for the rest of your career. We're here to help you. Hopefully this webinar has helped in some way. My name has been Brian Allen. It's my pleasure to be your host. Any questions or comments you may have, you can direct those to our website at www.careermp.com. Thank you for your time. Best of luck in your search. This has been a presentation of Career Management Partners. We thank you and hope to see you in another webinar soon. Good luck and bye-bye.